The city of Olsztyn became a part of Prussia, East Prussia to be precise, in 1772 during the first partition of Poland. It remained a part of East Prussia and later Germany until after the Second World War ended in 1945 and it was handed back to Poland. Now there were several partitions of Poland, and even Warsaw was at one point part of the Prussian region, so-called South Prussia, Südpreußen. So from 1795 onwards, even Warsaw was part of Prussia. However, that was short-lived until 1807, because that was when Napoleon created the Duchy of Warsaw, which was created from the former Polish territories now taken from Austria and Prussia. The border between East and South Prussia ran roughly along the Vistula River. However, after 1815, these original borders of Prussia were dissolved. Olsztyn did stay a part of East Prussia, but Warsaw was then under Russian influence. Now, before Olsztyn was in Prussia, it was part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and that was until 1772. The buildings you see here on the left are mostly Prussian buildings built in the early 20th century, as we can see by the architecture that you would also see in cities like Görlitz or even Berlin in Germany. This right here is the original town hall of Olsztyn, which was built in the early 20th century as well. Before that, there was another. The city grew in influence and expanded quite rapidly. Outside the city center, which was largely destroyed, you do, however, see many of these old buildings still around. The old town, however, had 40% of complete destruction. And that destruction took place by the Soviets, who entered the city in 1945. And the only things that were not damaged were, well, some areas outside the center, but also the churches in and around the old town of Olsztyn. Now what we see here is two bridges built during the Prussian era. The first one built in 1873, second in 1893, jointly referred to as the Eisenbahnbrücke, which had railway lines connecting to Königsberg, which is nowadays Kaliningrad. During the First World War, the Russian army planned to carry out destruction of both bridges, but that eventually did not happen. And the Second World War largely left these bridges intact without significant damages. After 1945, the Polish administration took over the railway services, and nowadays Polish trains obviously cross these bridges again, although there is no more connection to Königsberg, Kaliningrad. In 1989, both bridges were registered as monuments because of their historical significance. They remain a remarkable feat of Prussian engineering that's still in use nowadays. Now let's go and further explore Olsztyn. What we see here is the Church of Our Lady, Queen of Poland. It was designed by the Berlin architect Ludwig Dimm to serve as an evangelical garrison church for the German Empire. It is 14th century Gothic architecture, and it is largely or almost entirely intact, so it has not really been damaged during the war. And that was because of the efforts of one man. Jan Hanowski was the man not only responsible for this church but also others here in the old town of Olsztyn. Jan Hanowski persuaded the Soviets when they occupied the city in 1945 not to damage the churches in the city. So this is actually an old landmark that we get to admire here in Olsztyn. Other than that, about 40% of the old town of Olsztyn was damaged or entirely destroyed. The old town square is actually completely new, and around that you do find places that still have old architecture. So thank you, Jan Hanowski, for the sacrifices you've made and the heroism that we can nowadays admire what is left of old Olsztyn. So yeah, it was a good choice to travel this weekend because we're basking in sunlight. Look at this. There's no wind at all, so it's not cold. It's awesome. This is a very pleasant city, I have to say. I think I'll come back here in summer just to see a bit of the lakes around, because Olsztyn, Mazury is actually the wider region and it's the lake district of Poland. The Mazurian lakes live up to the Frisian lakes in the Netherlands, just a bit of a bigger area. Perhaps even could be seen as similar to Scandinavia in terms of lakes and nature forests. So yeah, Poland has a big tourism potential in that. For now mostly domestic, although Olsztyn Mazury Airport is expanding with flights already going to Düsseldorf, Wies and Niederrhein. Ryanair flies there from this year, so yeah. And as the sun is slowly but surely setting behind the buildings, I think I'll just go for lunch. It is 2:30 or something. Let's find a grill craft hub. That sounds like a place for me, right over there. Right, so I got the tornado steak right here, medium rare. It costs 79 zloty, and then you have an additional 12 zloty for the fries. So this looks delicious, and it's time for lunch. Cheers. And here we see the Cathedral of St. James the Apostle, the Cathedral of Olsztyn. It was built around 1378. The construction took quite long and the tower was only finished in 1596. It's been preserved during the Second World War, despite some renovations have been done and some additions have been made. The architect is actually unknown. It is a late Gothic style, but inside you also have Renaissance elements. An absolutely wonderful place to visit in Olsztyn, one of the main beautiful churches of northern Poland.